Dr. Judy, it's nice to see you. And Andrew, thanks for joining me.
Good to see you.
Yeah,
good to see you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, just for people that are actually, tuning in to watch us, is it possible if you could just give us a brief introduction, Dr. Judy, to yourself and your background, and also Andrew, if you can as well after.
Let's see, a citizen of the U.S. I got a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, structural engineering, and a master's degree in engineering mechanics, which is applied physics, and a PhD in materials engineering science with a dissertation on looking at very small things using interferometry, displacements and deformations of materials. And so what happened on 9/11, it all clicked. I tend to notice things in images, and that's what I noticed. A lot of strange events.
Okay. Andrew?
Yeah, so my background is in software development, but I currently do online tuition for the Open University, technology subjects. So I didn't really see anything wrong with 9/11 for about 18 months. And then I sort of got into the bombs in the building scenario and thought that was what happened.
Yeah,
then I got into this Scholars for 9/11 Truth group, which was founded by this guy, Stephen E. Jones and Jim Fetzer, and they were talking about maybe bombs, mainly thermite and blah, 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 blah. Got hooked in and roped into all of that. During that, I got in touch with Dr. Judy by a sort of slightly circuitous route, which we won't go into here. And she educated me quite a bit on a number of areas because she'd already been studying it by the time I spoke to her for 5 years. And just a quick note that it's important to study things very closely before posting stuff on the internet, which is what Dr. Judy did. She was doing it for at least 3 years before she publicly posted anything. So and then we sort of collaborated on various things related to 9/11 and sort of bounced ideas around and stuff. And so that's the basic scenario, really.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Dr. Judy, over to you. Since you've done your research and the work that you've done and a lot of factual information, I believe that you've come up with, can you tell me is there any updates since you've last done this? Has anything developed, good or bad?
Well, it's very well understood what happened, but the thing that's really blown my mind is the cover-up and how extensive it is and how mind controlled people are. I don't know what else you can say.
Yeah.
But it's a trait, an unfortunate trait of humans to want to go with the flow. So you just steer a group of people someplace. And I heard early on it's easier to control a group of people than it is to control a single person, and that's really what it comes down to.
Right. Okay.
Hard to control.
Has anything developed since what you've done? I mean, or is it staying exactly as it is? No one really taking notice in terms of the mainstream. I know the mainstream's all controlled, but is there any sort of hope for what you've done coming out of
the alternative community has covered my work up even further, and I think
really?
That's what their job is. Oh, by far.
Right. Okay.
And if it works covered up, why bother to bring it out more? It's the cover up is so extensive.
Yeah.
Yep. And they have various security guards for it, at every corner.
Gatekeepers.
Yep. Plenty of them.
Well, okay.
Some are even the same.
Really?
Yeah. And
Wow.
some have moved from 9/11 to the COVID thing. So
Right.
people in the COVID thing aren't going to look at my work because the others have already intercepted that.
Yeah, I've noticed. I won't mention names, but there are certain gatekeepers that are quite well known that when your name's mentioned, they don't really say anything, or it's very little. They don't seem to want to go down that road. And I can only think of two things: one, they just haven't bothered, or two, they are paid assets.
Or they're gullible and just follow along when someone says, "Oh, she's been debunked." Oh, okay, I'll ignore her work then. That's how easy it is to cover it up.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's
That's right. And I mean, I've written 2 books about that. I know we've discussed that a little bit before, Sean. And one thing I might add, though, is that I think there has been an ongoing interest in Dr. Judy's work. But I think it's in one sense how it's meant to be, in that we don't promote ourselves. We just put the information out there through people like yourself, and we don't seek attention from people like, Alex Jones or anybody like that, because they've proved themselves to be disingenuous. So the upshot of that is, I think that those that are genuinely curious and want to find out what really happened on 9/11, they can find the information. It's not as if we've been completely censored and removed from the internet. As Dr. Judy said, the main reason why people don't find the information is because of the gatekeepers and those, that last Dr. Judy said a couple of minutes ago, her work's been debunked and that debunked, and then people say, oh, has it? All right, I'll just move on to the next thing then, so yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And Andrew and I have a mutual friend who was just recently in touch with sort of a big player in the COVID business, and they thought that I was evil and awful. My work's been well debunked, and I'm just covering up what these other folks are trying to bring out. And so my friend said, "Oh, it's been debunked. Can you show me where?" And then we offered him a free copy of the book to find where it's wrong, but he doesn't want to look.
Right.
That's what it is. I know the truth. Don't confuse me with the facts.
Yeah. There was an English guy, I forgot his name now. He was trying to debunk your book, and I just couldn't listen to him anymore. I forgot his name. You'll probably know. It was in one of the videos Andrew sent me, and I forgot what
was
his
it Miles
name was.
Power? You're thinking of Miles Power?
That's it. That was him. Yeah. And it irritated me after a while. I just had to switch off.
There's no substance. He has no substance to it.
No substance, not backing up with anything at all. And I just thought, and I can't believe a lot of people are following him. If you look at his comments, the comments in his page, people are going, "Oh yeah, you're right," and then you can just, I mean, whether he just doesn't believe your work, or he's
he hasn't read it. He hasn't read it.
Yeah, read the book. Yeah.
I mean, if you've read it, then you have no problem understanding it.
No,
that's right. If you read it with a truly open mind, it's perfectly obvious that what Dr. Judy has shown us is true, and it's so obviously true.
There's so many things in it, but the one thing that stood out for me was those metal girders, or I don't even know what you call them, those black columns just waving a bit like that, and as they fell, they just crumbled into powder.
They don't slam to the ground,
and that's not aviation fuel doing that. And that for me, that was it. I thought, I've never seen anything like that before, turning into dust, into powder. Everything else was a bonus as well, but that did it for me. Yeah, there you go.
Does that look, what does that look like to you? Not what you're told that it looks like, but what does it actually look like? Dust. The drinking fountain.
Yeah, absolute. Yeah, let me have a look at that now. Wow. Yeah, look at that. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
It's frothing up into dust.
Yeah, I know.
Launched it's just, vertically.
Yeah, and it's almost like whoever did that is sitting there watching as we all fall for it, laughing their heads off, because how can you be so gullible to just look at that? Realistically, you should have bits of brick, or whatever it is, concrete, just falling, and all we see is just dust. And I can't get my head around that.
That's what what really got to me on 9/11. I was in the faculty conference room, and they're playing these pictures, and I'm looking and pointing at the screen, looking around the room like, you guys aren't saying that's a collapse. And they looked at me like, what kind of a wacko did we just hire?
Yeah.
They're already taken into it, and they had mentally had pitchforks in their hand. They need to go get somebody.
Yeah. No, I know. I can see that.
But looking at that frothing up into dust, stop and think and look away and think, what does a collapse look like? What would you expect it to look like? You look back and you go, nope, it doesn't look like that.
Yeah. No, I know. I've seen that. I mean, There's
know,
just
and they're straight
where
as
is it?
soldiers there. The remaining outer columns, and
Yeah,
they're not buckled. And that ambulance, that's a real giveaway.
yeah, it is, isn't it? Oh
It
yeah, of
doesn't look
course. I mean,
clobbered at all.
that should be crushed as well, shouldn't it?
Yeah, where's the rest of the building? This
Yeah,
is the afternoon of 9/11,
yeah,
or
yeah,
or around noon. It looks like from the sun it might be around noontime or in the afternoon, but you don't see much material left. And
no, you
that should
don't.
be, you know, 110-story building.
Is it true as well, Dr. Judy, that that the FBI, when they came to investigate the scene, were blocked by the CIA, or is that just a myth?
I don't know anything I can't see, and there's lots of
Yeah,
stories to get people distracted from what matters.
yeah, yeah.
And
Right.
Yeah,
and
I
so
mean, you've mainly sort of just focused on the actual physical evidence, haven't you,
yeah,
in the
yeah, what
videos and
happened?
what happened?
And actually, in order to solve a crime, you have to begin with what happened. In order to solve any
Yeah,
problem, you have to determine what the problem is you're trying to solve.
yeah,
And of course, on 9/11, we heard they hate us for our freedoms and Bin Laden and all this stuff, without ever thinking about what it was that happened.
yeah, yeah,
You have to
yeah.
determine what it is before you can say who did it or why they did it. And that's something that most people get distracted away from. And if you get people to argue about how it happened before they've determined what it is, they're assuming what problem they're trying to solve. And that's another trick for cover-ups,
Yeah,
is you get
yeah.
people to argue about a how before they know what it is.
So they've basically bypassed what happened, and it's just gone into how it happened and who did it and why they
Right.
did it.
And all of
Yeah,
those things in yellow require an assumption. They
yeah,
require you to assume what happened without
yeah.
ever, determining what happened. And the first boot camp type class in engineering is engineering statics, where you learn to draw, the problem statement in free body diagrams and so forth, and what's being solved for. You learn to first establish what the problem is you're trying to solve before you start solving it.
Yeah,
At first, students, get upset that they get marked off for not having that on their paper, and they finally get with it and decide it's just busy work, so they're going to lay it out while they're watching TV, and pretty soon the problem solves itself. While they're watching TV, because establishing what you're trying to solve is half the problem or more.
right. Okay.
If you're
So,
talking about, thermite or nanothermite or bombs or whatever, okay, what did they do? What is the relationship to what happened?
yeah,
And that's never shown.
yeah. So for you to sort of sum up, if you was just to sum up, to shut someone up with an undisputed fact, what would you say, just to, instead of going through an hour lecture, just to, if someone was watching this and say, well, I've got 5 minutes, tell me one fact that I have to sit there and go, shit, yeah, that's true. What would you, I mean, for me, it would be the metal columns turning into dust. But if it was for you, what would you say?
Well, there's lots of different things like that. One of the first things in my book is the timing. The building went away faster than it would take it to hit the ground by gravity. So it didn't go boom. The ground only shook for 8 seconds, but in a vacuum, it takes 9.5 seconds for somebody to throw a bowling ball off the roof and have it hit the ground.
Right.
That's a pretty tough problem. So the building had to have turned to dust.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the dust doesn't make a thud when it hits.
Right. And also the seismic activity didn't add up. Is that correct?
Yeah, it wasn't. It was only like the bottom 16 or 20 stories, 16 in one building, 20 on the other. That at most, if you dustify the rest of the building and just drop that amount to the ground, you could get the equivalent intensity. But it didn't have S waves and P waves. It only had surface waves. That's another thing. The type of signal. If you hit something with a hammer, you feel the vibration, elsewhere. That's S wave and P waves going. And the difference in the timing, we've all heard about seismic signals, that one travels faster than the other one. And by the difference in their timing of arrival, you can determine where the epicenter is. Yeah, here's the chart showing 8 seconds the ground shook. You can't
Yeah.
argue that it shook more than that. And then it takes, at least 9.5 seconds with no resistance whatsoever, which is another problem for it to hit the ground. I also went through some, that's in a vacuum. And building 7, okay, that's the end of tower 2 going. And then over here, tower 1 goes away.
Yeah.
There aren't big enough seismic things, but okay, at least we can see where they were in the chart. Now we have these various core blasts, so we know the seismic chart was working. But you get down to the bottom and you see nothing on the chart for building 7. After building 7 goes away, you see a little bit of something, but that was an earthquake in the Fox Islands in Alaska.
Right.
But it made it a 0.6, which is like jackhammer or less for building 7. And building 7 had 6 times the potential energy of the Kingdom, which made a 2.3 on the Richter scale.
Right. Okay.
6 times, and this made a 0.6.
Yeah.
So the building did not slam to the ground, but we saw it kind of turning to dust all afternoon with stuff pouring out of it.
Yeah. Jesus. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, I've seen most of this stuff anyway, but when it goes back through my head again, it just reaffirms how much bullshit they've told us.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like Dr. Judy says, there's so much stuff, and I think one of the more obvious things, people can get a bit bamboozled by the charts and stuff, but they're actually fairly straightforward if you study them for a little while, even if you're not familiar with them. I mean, but the thing that's really, I think, a big thing, as we said before we were recording, is the firefighters that survived, didn't they? So.
Yeah, 13 of them survived. They thought they were going to be goners because by the time they thought they're in a little pocket of air, and by the time they got excavated out from the 104 stories above them, they wouldn't be surviving. And then because it was totally blackout above them, then they realized that the dust went up and blocked out the sun. And then when the dust blew away and they could look and see blue sky, oh my gosh, and they walked out and they sort of didn't know where they were. And one said that it looked like they walked out onto an empty football field.
Yeah.
Another one thought they were facing the wrong building because there's supposed to be another building there. Where's tower 2?
Yeah. Right. Okay. Can I onto the next question here? Where is it? What would be to gain from doing this? So knocking down the towers, what do they achieve? Is it control? I mean, if they want money, they could print their own money. So in your idea, what would be the point of doing that? I know what I think.
The terrorists they're under your bed, they're in your closet, they're coming after you. Be afraid, be very afraid. Get strip searched at the airport, There's all sorts of fear things. And there's an incident that happened in Georgia that I like to point out, where this guy cooked his kid in his car, but they had videos of him at the food shop that morning, holding his kid, buying breakfast, and then had a picture of him going through the intersection, not turning to go to daycare, but going straight to work. Had a video of him backing his car into the parking lot. They know exactly what websites he went to during the day, and then where he went at lunch, and tossed some light bulbs in his car because he went with his friends. And then at 5 o'clock, whatever, drove out and drove to a mall where lots of witnesses got out and said, "Oh, what have I done? What have I done?" His kid was in the car. But the fact we have is every movement accounted for because of all these spy cameras.
Yeah.
And people wouldn't have put up with that without 9/11.
Yeah. So it's more of it's more to do with control.
It got people used. It started things. It got people used to the surveillance system.
Yeah.
But it also got people to, why is my package late? Because of 9/11. Why is this intersection changed? Because of 9/11. Why is your policy of your store changed? Because of 9/11. It just went on and on. Now it's because of COVID.
Yeah.
It's just a stamp of whatever you need explained away. Something else I'd like to point out about 9/11, when people say, well, does it matter if it was thermite or if it was this new technology or technology we didn't know about beforehand, or what? I like to say, okay, So it wasn't a gizmo that could dustify the buildings. It was the 19 bad guys, instead of going, with box cutters and airplanes, they put thermite in the building. Everything else in the story stays exactly the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why, how it happened becomes important. Also, to know that such a technology exists, and if enough people know it exists, chances are it won't get used as frequently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
you're
think
right.
that's that's one of the main takeaways really. Once you've established what happened, is you can establish that a technology was used, and just to
Could be
establish
used
that,
for good.
right, and it could be used for good. I mean, the naming of the technology, people sort of say, oh, well, it's HARP, oh, it's directed energy weapons. Well, we know it wasn't HARP, but we know, and we also know that it was some source of directed energy, and that then means that that technology is real. So you have to acknowledge that, because that's what takes you away from this. People say to me quite regularly, oh, Andrew, but what if there were bombs in the building as well? And I say, well, so what if there were? I mean, do you know how
Maybe
a bomb
somebody
works?
was picking their nose at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, maybe somebody had some fireworks in a drawer and that caused a bang. Should we go and find which drawer those fireworks were in just to see if that caused the bang, or should we consider what this technology did and whose technology it is? Isn't that more important? So that's what I say about we don't. There may have been some bombs in the building. Who knows? Maybe somebody had a bomb in the basement somewhere that was illegally stored. But so what? The point is that we have to understand that somebody has this technology, somebody sanctioned its use, and we've got to get past all this. Oh, it's not important, to discuss what happened. We just know the official story is untrue. We've been saying this for, I think, well over 10 years now, and a few people have taken notice, but it's still, woefully inadequate, really, to my way of thinking. And also, again, the fact of studying the weather on 9/11, which nobody talks about that.
No, they don't.
I think there's about 5 people that talk about that. There's Dr. Judy, there's Richard D. Hall, Mark Conlon, Wolf Clan Media, that's Chris Hampton, me, and a couple of others. Nobody else talks about that. But yet, what is being foisted upon us all, this climate change agenda and all that nonsense, well, that's all irrelevant once you understand, as I look at it, once you understand on what happened on 9/11 and the days before. It clearly shows that somebody, I don't know whether Dr. Judy wants to put it this way, but clearly to me shows that somebody was manipulating the weather quite accurately, from the data that's in the weather the telescope.
Without using any speculation whatsoever, you come to the question of, you had this hurricane for 4 days aiming straight towards Manhattan, then it stops with the outer bands at the edge of Long Island, and and then afternoon it turns around, starts heading out of town. But if you have this hurricane headed towards Manhattan, why don't you have any warnings of voluntary evacuation before it has to be insisted on? Just like with Hurricane Rita, Houston, Texas, they have voluntary evacuation, then they had ordered evacuation as the hurricane got closer. That's the normal trend of things. So why wasn't there any notification like that for Manhattan? How could they be 100% sure that hurricane wasn't going into Manhattan? That's the big question. So you don't have to speculate. That question leads you there, that they were 100% sure of where the hurricane was going to go.
Dr. Judy, just to play devil's advocate for someone who doesn't know anything about weather or science or anything like that, what if I'm going to just play dumb? What if I said, and I didn't know anything about this, well, what's to stop the weather just deciding, like the wind, it just decides to blow a different way on that moment? Is there
that's fine. That's irrelevant. And actually, there was a high pressure system moving west to east at the same time the hurricane was moving east to west. But how would they know exactly when it would turn around? And not go through Manhattan and then turn around, over the Great Lakes.
No, that's a good point.
You know, and we know that they're covering this stuff up, you know, because in this, we won't play this clip here, but this Geraldo Rivera, who's the specialist hurricane reporter, you know,
He was celebrating 40 years of chasing hurricanes and reporting them.
And he says, if only a hurricane came on 9/11, you know, in the idea of, you know, defeating the terrorists or diverting them, whatever. Yeah. Geraldo, you know, here it is. There's your 9/11 hurricane. Why don't you know?
Yeah.
Why don't you know about it? Why don't you talk about it? So, you know, it becomes really just so blazingly obvious that you know, who the gatekeepers are once you study the evidence, and you can't, you know, this is evidence that you can't debunk it. You know, yes, you can argue with the interpretation of that evidence, but I think once you get beyond a certain point, it's like arguing with the evidence that there's 7 days in a week or whatever, you know, or that night follows day. You know, you end up really, it becomes that blatant and that plain once you've read the Where Did the Towers Go book and studied the Dr. Judy's presentations.
There's something I would like to point out about the title of the book. You know, in 1945, was it the 6th and the 10th of August when they did Hiroshima and Nagasaki? That the evidence of what happened to Hiroshima on that day was evidence that we could have nuclear power plants. Do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So here's the cover of my book. The subtitle of my book is Evidence of Directed Free Energy Technology on 9/11. I'm not saying that's what was used. I'm saying this is evidence that free energy can exist.
Yeah.
And Pete, sometimes people ask, you know, what do you mean free energy? Why do you say it's free? My answer to that is, well, if you look at the energy change in, you know, if you consider it in the normal scheme of things, the amount of energy that would be required to destroy that building, then you can't, there's no obvious or white world known delivery mechanism for that energy. So that energy is somehow, we don't know where it came from exactly, but again, I'm using my words, not Dr. Judy's, that either this energy was somehow extracted from the environment, or it was extracted from within the material itself somehow, or it was just the way that you can use energy, you know, is different to the way that we normally understand it. I know that might seem a bit.
There's various eyewitnesses describe the ambient temperature being cooler. I mean, things being cooler than ambient temperature, like the dust. It was itchy and painful on their skins, but it was colder than ambient temperature. And the same with a lot of material around there. So, you know, Pete came out of it. But as I described directed energy, the energy was directed to do something differently than it normally does. Normally, atoms are attracted to each other, but it looks like, you know, you can, you know, from the cover image of the book, they suddenly started repelling each other. And it sort of looks like a steam explosion, kind of when but everything needs more space and blooms out. But it's important to remember that analogy with Hiroshima. You know, that was evidence of nuclear power plants. This is evidence of free energy. And people talking about this energy, perhaps that was a test run to see what the long-term effects were on people. You know, you can you know, go off and guess at lots of things like that, but it is an interesting test study to see what kind of leftover stuff there is.
Do you know what, Dr. Judy, staying with the subject, I mean, I can't remember where I got this research from, and I don't even know if it's fact, but there were rumors that fighter pilots or F-16 pilots were saying that the way these guys, I'm just using their words roughly, flew these planes into the building, that's not actually possible. And we wouldn't be able to even do that, especially at that low altitude. It was basically fighter pilots saying that's not possible. So what my question leads to is, they were saying that they wouldn't be able to even perform that maneuver. You'd have to be really highly trained to perform that maneuver. But my question comes to what Richard D. Hall was talking about as well, that do you believe there were planes? And if
It's
there's,
not so much a belief that, like, from my experiences, I've ridden with glider pilots. That's, airplane, no engine.
Yeah.
And, ridge lift by Virginia Tech, that's what we're using, a lot of ridge lift. But then some of my friends moved to Midwest, and they had to use cornfields. And the air movement is different over pavement than it is over the cornfields,
right.
and different amounts of airflow upwards. Now imagine what Manhattan's like.
Yeah.
You have some dark buildings, some light buildings, some reflective buildings. The amount of turbulence and the
Yeah.
ability to steer through that, it'd be impossible.
Impossible. Yeah. So would that mean then that what we're looking at is
And at
probably
that speed.
yeah, exactly. So and I think even some
I'm gonna add something else. On 9/11, that was the other thing, other than the frothing up building, that got to me, was that they'll slice 5-inch tall slice through several columns that supposedly was done by a wingtip. The wingtip isn't even strong enough to hold fuel. And you see it bouncing as the plane's starting to, taxi down the runway. You see it jiggle up and down. So it's not very, very sturdy. How is that going to go slicing through a column and leave just a 5-inch tall slice? Nothing crumbled around it. It really caught my attention, like something weird's going on here.
Yeah.
But also knowing from optics, I know that various trickery and ghost patterns and stuff can be done. And I noticed that the lighting was weird with it. Looking westward early in the morning, you should have the sun over your shoulder, and it would reflect off of anything coming through. At some point, if you have a rounded fuselage, you're going to have a bright reflected line on there.
Yeah.
We had this black whale.
Yeah.
And that caught my attention. And then other images of looking eastward, it looked like an airplane, somewhat, except sometimes it was a long skinny plane, sometimes it was a chubby fat plane. The image business seemed kind of weird. And I do know you can project images, but also I think it was in 1999, there was an article in the Washington Post, in the white world, about, I think the title of it was "When Seeing Isn't Believing." And they talked about, with the Iraq war, of projecting an image of Allah over the city to scare people.
Right. Okay.
So that technology, they're defining as being available to project images. I'm not proving what happened, but I'm saying that the lighting didn't make sense. The hole in the building didn't make sense. And photographer who was standing at the base of the building didn't hear a crash, he saw an explosion, but he never saw an airplane.
Yeah, I've also read somewhere where a pilot, I think it was a Boeing pilot, saying that the plane would have had to have gone about 500 mile an hour into those towers, and it wouldn't be able to do that speed at that altitude anyway.
Yeah, the plane would come apart.
Yeah, exactly.
I've gotten this hobby of looking at what air crash videos or descriptions about different things, and there's various airplanes that flew too high and the pilot was asleep, and then suddenly the thing loses control and the guy's trying to gain control of the plane as it's falling. And fortunately that one did, but it tore off some parts on the way down as the air is flowing too fast. And there's lots of different things, like there's a pilot who with a propeller plane in Alaska that lost the whole propeller, came off and sliced through the fuselage. And so he's got oxygen, but his passengers don't. He's got to get the plane down quickly, but he can't because it's going too fast and would tear up the plane. And so he's got that problem to deal with, to figure out how to manage. But there's a lot of stories like that where it's clear that the plane can't go the fast, the economic altitude, they can't use that same speed at sea level. And I think we all know that going down as the plane's taking off, man, that plane's like full throttle, it's working out. You can feel the material kind of groaning, and the thing takes off and it's still going like full out, pedal to the metal, until it gets up a certain place and you start feeling the plane sort of relaxing and feeling better. And things get quieter. But until then, that plane's really stressed out.
Yeah.
And another thing that came to mind back then was I used to have old Honda Accord. It was rusted out. I mean, it's a front wheel drive, but when you start up from a stop, the front wheels start turning before the back wheels. you know he's got a problem. So coming down a switchback of a mountain, I have to go real carefully around the turns. And people have put a bag of groceries in the back seat. They know, if they take a fast turn, that bag's going to fall over. But like with, going down the switchbacks real slowly, that's the kind of condition you'd have for a plane going that fast at sea level. Everything's going to just come apart. It's not designed for those stresses. Why would they over design it?
In your opinion, then, do you think it was holographic projections over a drone or a missile or something? Would you say?
It wasn't like conventional holographic, but it was some process of projection. It wasn't a real object because the light did not act correctly for that.
Okay. Right.
And there's also a helicopter that was near the south side of the South Tower when supposedly a plane went through, just a couple hundred feet from them. And the police officer on the plane described it as an evil magician's trick. The plane just, went under them through the building out the other side, but their helicopter didn't get jostled at all.
Wow.
So it's not a real plane.
Yeah.
That's why I called it evil magician's trick.
Right. Got ya. My next question here is, so from all your work and your research, is there any serving or ex-military, government, police, doctors or scientists that are backing you up from either the inside or the outside?
I have had someone who knows about this technology who has backed me up.
Wow. Okay.
That I won't go any further than that, but
of course. Okay. So not many people then, or would you say a few?
Not many that could afford to say something about it.
Right. Okay. That's better than nothing, though, isn't it?
They reached out to me because they're very amazed that I had the guts or insanity to speak up.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That they had to congratulate me on that.
Really? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I could congratulate on that as well. But it's just a shame that there must be more people that know about this. So what about other engineers such as yourself?
I've had quite a few engineers actually who have read my book and then, oh my gosh, one of them after reading my book quit their job and decided they needed to start doing something about this. And they made that the video Irrefutable. That was an engineer who read my book all on his own. He decided to pursue that.
Yeah. The Irrefutable film, for people that have not seen that, it's some people don't like the music, but apart from that, it's really powerful sort of presentation of all the evidence, and it's only about an hour and 10 minutes, the whole thing or something. And
it's really good.
Yeah,
really good information. And there are other ones. Actually, there's an engineer I know someplace that works on his own, and if he's going to hire somebody else to work with him on a job, he gives them my book and has them read it. And depending on the response, that he determines whether or not he's going to hire them.
Yeah.
Like, can they think, for themselves? Can they think independently?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 500-page interview question.
Yeah.
But the thing is, with 9/11, it's really and the COVID thing, it's just replicated, isn't it? It's the same.
Oh yeah.
Just a different villain.
And I've been dying to jump in with this other example of talking about the PSYOP. This afternoon I was listening to that hearing that was a week ago in the Senate hearing by Ron Johnson, and there's various doctors that were given patients ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, and they said, well, is there any drawback? Are there any adverse reactions? And he says, yeah, my medical license. That's the only negative. I mean, that says it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And actually, that brings me on to my next question. What, I mean, it's off topic because it's got nothing to do with 9/11, but what are your thoughts on the COVID situation? Where do you sort of align with on that? The vaccine, the whole.
It's been pretty obvious from the beginning. I just had some knee surgery and was bedridden right when that started unfolding. And so I had nothing to do, don't know where to go, and was watching the count of the cases online and the red zone and the yellow zone, and seeing that on a TV set. You know, like my neighbors would watch the TV and would have that. You know, it really got to me. This, you know, are we in the red zone today? Is it? It's like the terrorist is in your closet. He's under your bed. Hey, he's coming for you. Panic. It was just driven full throttle.
Yeah.
But the thing that I saw first off that was the biggest thing, and it still is the biggest thing in my mind, is our Walmart. Okay, they closed all of the competition stores, so you had to go to Walmart, which was normally open 24 hours a day, but now they cut the hours in half, and so you had a more crowded store and less time, packed more people in. Now, how is that supposed to be helping?
Yeah.
It was so illogical. It was like, obviously there's another agenda happening.
Yeah.
Because
So
you force people to shop in a more crowded store and then pack them in the less amount of time. They can't go elsewhere.
So in your mind, is it similar to the terrorist thing? So there is no terrorist for you. Is there a virus, and is the vaccine done deliberately to damage and harm people? I know it's not your profession in that field, but
yeah, I'd be just doing speculation. But it's you know, there's always a virus. You know, there's a little kids always get, you know, the snot-nosed kids. That's why they have snot nose, because they're always getting sick. They're building their immune system. But as for any, you know, big bad wolf, I haven't seen any evidence of any. There are people who are injured by the vaccine, or whatever you want to call it. I call it shots, because it's not a vaccine. It doesn't prevent infection, it doesn't prevent transmission, and it doesn't improve one's health condition.
No, you're right. Yeah, it's the wrong word.
So, yeah.
I'm just used to saying it because it's just one of those things. But yeah, you're right. It's a shot or a jab. Yeah, the jabs. Yeah. And so do you think they're actually designed to harm people, in your opinion, or?
It's the way it is because somebody wants it that way. You don't have to speculate to come up with that conclusion. And there's enough evidence out there that people have been harmed. So somebody wants it that way. It becomes quite clear. And then you wonder about, they want to give it to old folks. Is that, and the US operates differently than other countries. They come up with this fake data saying that people who've had the shots are in the hospital less and come out better. It's just fake data. As though they're enticing people into getting shots so that they die sooner. So is that how they're planning on saving Medicare and Social Security? You know,
Judy, Dr. Judy, I've heard people say depopulation, and I could go along with that. But if depopulation is one of the reasons why they're doing it, let's just say they wipe out a few million people, and then we reproduce again. So they've done it for nothing.
No, I mean, it also affects reproduction.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So so not only do they get rid of excess amount, they can also stem it from people actually procreating any further.
Right. The amount of miscarriages and the amount of dead babies born is skyrocketing.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's evidence. That's not speculation.
You're right. I'm playing a bit of devil's advocate and playing dummy to sort of represent the people that would ask you these questions who don't know what you know or what I know. So yeah, I get that. And you know, when it comes to, we call them the cabal, you call them the
crew.
The crew. I like that one. Who do you think the crew is? I mean, there's always names fired out. I get Rockefeller, Rothschild, but what would you say the crew
we don't
really
need to know. And I'm thinking the people's names that we know are just surface characters. There's people that's deeper down in that are, you know, pulling the strings of the puppet.
That's what I mean. So yeah, I mean, because you can always say prime ministers, presidents, they're just, you know, they're foot soldiers. But what, you know, I call them weeds. So the weeds come and go, but the roots are always there. who would you say, or what are the roots, in your opinion, from your experience?
I don't know if we've ever even heard of them.
Yeah.
You know, they're the puppet masters, you know, behind the scenes. But there's I used to joke with a friend about Stephen Jones, that he's got the green ticket, you know, to the underground world when they blow up everything, and he thinks he's, you know, he's supposed to pull this off, and he's been guaranteed the green ticket. But somebody should tell him it's not the green ticket he needs, it's the purple ticket. In other words, these puppets that are being used, I think that they're going to be disposable.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I think we all know that.
I think also, I mean, just to throw in my comments, not that you asked me, but just, you know, I think we spoke a little bit about that in the last interview you and I did, Sean. That I think, you know, there's many levels to this, aren't there? And you know, it goes sort of, I think, beyond basic physical humans. You know, I think there's an element of that, and I know that Dr. Judy herself has said that 9/11 was an attack on human consciousness. You know, and I think that's sort of relevant to this part of the discussion, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
very much.
I was speaking to Dr. Amanda Vollmer, and she was just telling me that you know, these guys are basically just surface stuff. It goes far beyond who we see, and she's got a name for them as well, and I can't remember what it was, but it seems to me that anyone who's really doing their research properly knows that there's a hidden hand. She did name me a few families, Rockefeller, Rothschild, but I think it probably even goes beyond them as well.
Yeah, those are names that just like get thrown around, sort of like HAARP gets thrown around.
Yeah,
I call HAARP is high advancement of real propaganda.
yeah, that makes sense, actually, when I look at it like that. You're right.
I think, you know, as Dr. Judy is saying, really, we do hear a lot of these names, and we can't really, you know, you know, you see about David Icke's talk about Sabbatean and Frankists. That's one of his latest ones. That was a new term to me when he came out with that, whatever, 3 or 4 years ago it was. And, you know, Zionists we hear, and it's all the Jews, it's all the Rockefellers, it's all the Rothschilds, it's the
Larry Silverstein.
Yeah, you know, and it's like, oh, this is a group that's derived from you know, the Knights Templar, and then we've got things like the Knights of Malta, and we've got Skull and Bones.
What good does that do you?
Exactly. So you know, I've heard a lot of these names as well, and I've read bits and pieces about them, but I can't say, oh yeah, you know, looking at all that, oh, it was clearly the Knights Templar which had all this technology to do the destruction of the buildings. No,
and here's how we go get them.
Yeah, and here's how we go get them. Both those bits of information are missing, you see. So, and it's like, just again, it's digressing slightly, but I've just, you know, I did this talk about Agenda 21, and the name that kept coming up with that sort of stuff was the Rockefellers. You know, so they've got something to do with it, but it's all very difficult to pin a particular crime on a particular you know, person, or even several named people. You know, we say the Rockefellers, but which ones? You know, what individual named Rockefellers could we say? You know,
and how do you know?
And how do you know exactly? We can certainly pin certain things on the Rockefeller Foundation, but how does that help us? You know, anyway.
There's a saying I like, and some friends of mine made me a T-shirt with it on it. Know what it is that you know, that you know that you know, and know that everything else you don't know, and don't confuse the two. Right. Don't replace the and that's one of the things that's the hardest for people, is that, you know, like you're asking me specific questions, and I tell you what I know, like about the planes and so forth, that it couldn't be this, couldn't be that. You know, I'm not saying I knew how it was done. I'm saying this is what I know, that real planes, you know, would jostle the helicopter, so we can eliminate that. But it's important to just be comfortable knowing what it is that you know, and not having to have the answer. And that's part of the attack on human consciousness. People want an answer, so they grab for HAARP or this, that, and the other. And like even the fires in California, must have been the same thing, you know, that destroyed the towers. How do you know? Yeah, what's the connection? It's just they're just grabbing at something to go for. but knowing what it is that you know is very important when propaganda is surrounding you, so that you know what you yourself have established, not what you believe, because, and this is a very hard distinction to make, not what you believe because that's what you saw in the TV news, or because somebody you respect told you that and whatnot. That's gets tricky.
Yeah, I don't even like using the word belief because it's got lie in the middle of it, you know. So I try to stay away
Good
from
point.
belief. Yeah, I just prefer to go with what I know, or I think, but not I believe.
And
Because then when you say you believe, you're switching off your own thoughts, your own energy, tuning into anything. You're just going, I don't need to think, I just believe. And I think there's words are very powerful, you know.
And that's actually one of the goals of my book, is to try to get people to look at what they know. And it's not a difficult book, but it starts out pretty slowly because people are kind of damaged, you know, in arriving to it, as to, okay, in this picture, what do you see? You know, I don't tell you there's not enough material there. It's like, look, you know, can you account for a building here? And get them to work through what they know instead of believing in something. So when people say, well, I don't believe in her conclusion. What conclusion is that? My conclusion chapter is a list of facts that were established through the book. And it's important for people to be able to do that, or else we're going to be really a pup on a string, as my grandmother used to say.
And I remember watching some of your stuff. It's not theory, it's fact, because you're only stating facts. These are not theories. You're just stating facts that you found, and they are facts. Whereas I usually hear people sort of say, "Oh, the theory,"
that's a way of marginalizing something.
Yeah, and it just de-energizes the whole thing, and it takes away what it is that you're trying to do. And you know, that word, it's almost like saying the conspiracy theorist. It come out the CIA's terminology. I think they came up with that, didn't they? And it just sort of devalues it's trying to devalue what you're doing or what you're saying.
I did an interview this past fall where the person was really, you know, trying to promote conspiracy theories and wear it as a badge of honor. And that's not what I'm about. And I had one of my slides I presented, you know, here's the tower and it's no longer there. Is that a theory that the tower isn't there? And of course, he took out various slides and clipped it out. But the importance of it not being a theory, of going on facts, you can't take somebody to court on theories.
Yeah, it's true, actually. And you know what?
And I filed the case.
Can I ask what happened with your case? Did you progress with that when you tried to take it?
Went as far as it could. The Court of Appeals, it's next to the Supreme Court. Those judges were very respectful, and this is the first time I realized what a big mess of doo-doo this is. Is they in the footnotes of their written decision acknowledge they're ignoring the law in order to dismiss the case.
Wow.
It wasn't a lack of evidence. Okay, you realize they don't want to get dustified on the way home from work.
Yeah.
And then the Supreme Court didn't feel like hearing it, so they don't have to hear it. You know, but the fact that they want something that establishes a precedence, well, that's, you know, or something's, you know, legit or not. I would think this would qualify, because having the court dismiss a case because they ignored the law is a problem there.
Yeah.
And that told me what a big deal it is, what a big problem it is.
I think we've seen exactly the same sort of thing going on with COVID, where many laws seem to have just been cast aside. It doesn't really matter that people are dying, you know, and the law no longer matters unless it relates to enforcing COVID measures. When the law is fine for those things, apparently, you know, they can use it to enforce these measures. But,
good point.
You know, but to defend anybody's right to health and life, that it seems that most courts around the world are not interested in that anymore. You know, they've just been taken over. And I think, to just go back a couple of steps in the conversation, another thing that Dr. Judy said, and I think it's very valid, and we must think about this more, is that a lot of times now, because so many people have turned away from from the mainstream media, as I now call it, and switched to alternative media. That is often populated by people, to quote Dr. Judy, with an opinion and an internet connection, and they build a following around that. And for people that are not careful, you see, both Dr. Judy and myself and Richard D. Hall, we have professional experience in doing analysis where you've actually got to look at something, gather data, analyze it, and make some conclusions. You know, we've each got different slants on that because of our own experience. But a lot of people don't have that experience, so they'll just go with anything. And then again, to quote Lloyd Pye, yes, be open-minded, but don't be so open-minded that your brains fall out. You know, that's another problem. And then the other thing I'd like to just mention is that because science has become so corrupted and so politicized, and that's never been more evident than right now, the people like us who no longer trust the system can lose trust with science, which is fair enough, but forget that not all of science is based on, you know, sort of corporate control and that sort of thing. Things like measurement, analysis, and review and reflection are all part of science, and basic skills like doing calculations, learning about trigonometry, learning about algebra, learning about calculus and things like that. That's all part of science if you get sufficiently far down it. And that those things are not based on, they're all based on observation, analysis, and deduction and things like that. And you shouldn't throw those things out. You should try and learn how to do those things and apply those basic skills to any YouTube channel, for example, that you happen to come across, and then test it. Is it putting out good info? And then you need your intuition as well, of course. So people, a lot of the people that we speak to either haven't learned those skills in the first place and don't seem to want to, or don't realize their importance. That's one of the things that I've really come to see in the last sort of 5 years, particularly. Where people have become less and less trusting of science for very good reasons. Again, it's this idea of throwing out the baby with the bathwater. So I think that's something that people should think about as well.
Recently, I've started my presentations with a slide of this little toddler leaning over a jug of antifreeze, and it has poison symbol on it, but he can't read, but he knows what Kool-Aid tastes like, and it just looks like a nice jug of Kool-Aid. So he feels like he's an expert at what Kool-Aid's like, and he thinks he should go for the jug. And it's showing that a little bit of knowledge doesn't necessarily work, and it doesn't make you an expert.
Yeah, you're right. Dr. Judy, just to wrap up, can I ask what you think, not believe, what you think is going to happen in the future? What you project might be happening especially with the crew? Do you have any insight or any predictions that you envision them sort of manifesting or doing?
Just going by patterns that I know how things are. It's like, don't look here, look over there. There's this recent thing, especially in the UK, of backing off on the mandates and all. Yeah. Is that to regain some credibility? Because now what's plan B or plan C? They don't just give up and go away. No. And also another important thing to remember is you can't comply your way out of tyranny. No, you can't. A lot of people say, "Oh, just to get along, just go ahead and comply." No, that's it has to come to principles. Have to be important, and people should remember to rely on those and logic. Yeah. I was speaking to Alex Thompson. He sort of works at the UK Column News, also a very good analyst, and he thinks that possibly they could throw in a possible World War III distraction. Do you think that could be on the cards, especially what we're looking at with Russia and Ukraine as a distraction? That could be one of the backup plans, because it forces people's focus to be elsewhere. But I was thinking they were going to start doing, the shelves were getting emptied out of our local Walmart, except I went, was it last night? It was the night before, I think. And the shelves were more full than before.
Right.
But when I went 3 or 4 weeks ago, absolutely no cat food, absolutely no cat litter.
Really?
But all the, no meat, but all the makeup shelves, if you wanted to buy makeup, were chock full.
Right.
And
Right.
to me, there's a logic issue there,
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
not going to have a whole lot extra display shelves, that where they don't move merchandise. That's a waste of space.
Mm.
They would cut down on the amount of assortments, but to have 100% of the cat food. And I need more cat litter, and so I stopped night before last just to see. I had me going by there and wanted to see just in case, and by golly, there had some.
Wow.
So something got turned around. So I don't know if they're trying to tighten the belt a bit on people to cutting out all the meat and whatnot, just to see what would happen, and they found the limit and decided to ease up a little bit.
I just got the feeling, and from people I've been talking to, that they've gone from one extreme to the next, and after COVID, either maybe there's another virus, possibly. I mean, they could keep that going on and on. It's just a reoccurring actor in a smoke.
Oh, there is a new virus.
I was there.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's actually in the UK.
What's it called now?
It's stealth virus or stealth disease, and that's why everybody's dropping dead who had the COVID shots. They're dropping dead because they have stealth virus, the stealth disease.
Yeah.
You haven't heard that one?
Not in those way, not in that way anyway. But
it's actually called that. Do a search on stealth disease.
Stealth disease, right? Okay, because I heard the version of the climate control disease. People are dying from climate control now. Climate change. Sorry, climate change.
Yeah, they're having to explain away why you have these footballers, dropping dead on the field. It's stealth disease.
Yeah, I did read something on the BBC, and they said something about what is it? Players haven't trained in a long time. The game's getting faster, and they just pissed it away.
It doesn't work.
I think what it is that there's this virus that's going around, and it's going into the unvaccinated people, and it's not affecting them, but they're breeding this virus, and then it's jumping out of the unvaccinated people and going to the vaccinated people and killing them. You see, so it's our fault, because we need to get vaccinated to protect the vaccinated people against this disease that's breeding in us. You see, this virus or whatever it is. That's the story they're going to come out with next.
Of course. I mean, when I spoke to Dr. Amanda Vollmer, she actually goes along with the germ theory thing, where she says, like, viruses don't even exist as far as she's concerned. It's viruses are just inside your body, and it's a byproduct.
You mean
of your
terrain theory? Yeah, you said germ theory. Yeah.
So I had a good chat with her yesterday for about an hour and a half.
Oh, good.
We're just putting the video together, so I'll send that to you guys. You can maybe forward it to Dr. Judy, but she really opened my mind up to a lot of things, and she's quite passionate about what she knows. So she's just said we've been lied to, going way back with big pharma, and how they pushed away natural medicine, and sold a lie to the doctors that we train. That's
why so many people are getting fat, because of all the fake food.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think one of the other things they're brewing, well, two things that they seem to be brewing. One is, I know we've spoken about this before, is the financial crash. Yeah. And somebody, actually, I was watching a Rainer Filmic video the other day, and he pointed out that the swine flu thing happened around just after that last 2008 financial crash. So I think he was making an association between those two things. And obviously things might be done in the opposite order here, with the COVID scam and then the financial crash and the digital currency they want to bring in. So that's, I think, worth mentioning, not that people haven't heard of that before. And the other one, which is more of an interest to me in at least some sense, is the fake alien invasion. And we had this story the other day of Uri Geller warning NASA to prepare for an alien invasion or something, and that was all over the press again. So
Yeah.
they seem to be sort of stacking that deck a bit and hedging their bets on that one. I think you and I have spoken about that before. So, but that you know, again, that's sort of in the background, but I think it's something we should at least pay attention to. And I know Alex Thompson's mentioned that a little bit, hasn't he, as well? So, you know,
he did. In fact, Dr. Vollmer mentioned that as well in a
right.
passing comment yesterday. But she was a bit concerned that she said there's a lot of disinformation assets out there, you know, shills or agents or whatever you want to call them. And she said you can spot them. But I asked her about Rainer Filmic and what he's doing, and she said, I've been following that, but he seems to be now going down the line of there is a virus. And she said, and he's totally dismissing the terrain theory.
Well, no, I disagree with that. I mean,
Really?
maybe we won't get to that, because if you listen to that thing he put out the other day, he didn't quite say that. He said he doesn't want to use the virus, no virus scenario for his action because he thinks
offend people. Yeah.
Well, not so much that, partly that he didn't say that really. You have to listen to what he said, but he basically says it for getting indictments on out, which is what his objective is. That's less important. You know, the fact is that it was all based on the PCR test. So even if the virus exists, you know, in some form, the PCR test still doesn't work. You know, even if you assume that the virus is as they describe it, the test itself was a fraud, and on that basis you can get rid of the rest of it, really. So I agree with him on that.
Yeah, it's like what I learned about, you know, with 9/11 is
A little bit.
when people would ask about the planes, and I'd you know, want to argue about that, and this is one of the first times I've actually discussed it. But you know, I'd say, well, let's focus on the building. The buildings mostly turn to dust in midair. Real airplanes can't do that, and neither can fake airplanes. So why get distracted talking about airplanes? Let's talk about the building.
So really,
I agree with Amanda and others that say the same thing. That I'm fairly sure that this whole terrain theory is you know, more valid than the germ theory and stuff. And if you get rid of the virus and you understand what it really is, then they can't con you with the next virus, you know, the next AIDS and the next Ebola and all of that. That's all gone then. But it's a bit like trying to convince people that there aren't any planes on 9/11. It's really tough. It's really tough to do that. You know, and so I think there is quite a good analogy there from speaking from Dr. Judy and my own experience on that issue.
Also, it's less true now, but like 6 months ago about the masks, arguing about, you know, masks helpful or not helpful. You know, why? You know, that's a belief thing that you're arguing with people on, and that you're not going to win that one. So leave it alone, like the plane thing. Because that's not the main course. That's just a. And I think it's now understood enough that the mask thing is just a gimmick, that maybe I can wear my dream mask that I've been planning on, you know, from the beginning, that says PSYOP maintenance, you know, on the mask. So it requires you to wear a mask, you know, where it says PSYOP maintenance. 6 months ago, I thought I'd be arrested for wearing it.
Is that, Judy, is there anything you want to bow out on before we go?
I sent through Skype. I didn't read it all, so I don't know. I just copied it from where I had it, and that Andrew, you want to read it? It's in your Skype window.
I can read it if you want. Yeah.
Somebody sent it to me.
Yeah, I think I've seen this fairly recently, but it says, among all the vaccines I've known in my life, diphtheria, tetanus, measles, rubella, chickenpox, hepatitis, meningitis, and tuberculosis, I want to also add the flu and pneumonia. I have never seen a vaccine that forced me to wear a mask and maintain my social distance, even when you are fully vaccinated. I've never heard of a vaccine that spreads the virus even after vaccination. I've never heard of rewards, discounts, incentives to get vaccinated. I've never seen discrimination for those that didn't vaccinate. I've never seen a vaccine that threatens the relationship between family, colleagues, and friends. Never seen a vaccine that used to threaten livelihoods, work, or school. Nor have I ever seen a vaccine that cancelled HIPAA, HIPPA, that is. I have never seen a vaccine that would allow a 12-year-old to override parental consent. After all the vaccines I listed above, I have never seen a vaccine like this one, which discriminates, divides, and judges society as it is. But as the social fabric tightens, it's a powerful vaccine. It does all these things except immunize you. If we still need a booster dose after we are fully vaccinated, and we still need to get a negative test after we are fully vaccinated, and we still need to wear a mask after we are fully vaccinated, and we still and still be hospitalized after we've been fully vaccinated, it will likely come to, it's time for us to admit that we've been completely deceived. The question now is, will we take back our lives and hold all the perpetrators fully responsible for the mass murder they have caused?
Wow.
So yeah,
that's quite a statement, that, isn't it, really? To go out.
If you stop and look at the logic, of what's going on, instead of just believe and accept and move on, that's what I liked about that statement, is that it helps people stop and think.
Yeah, and you know what? That's the thing. A lot of people don't think. I was saying this to Dr. Judy, to Dr. Amanda Volmer yesterday, that I know there's a lot of intelligent, well-educated, high IQ people, far superior in everything than what I'm at, yet they can't see it.
That's the problem. That's why, because they're fully indoctrinated.
Yeah, I know, but then why is it then there's people that are not as intelligent as them, should we say, even people like myself, that haven't fallen for that?
You are intelligent.
Well, but you know what I mean. I mean,
yeah, it's how you define intelligent.
Academically, I'm not.
I know what you mean, Sean. I think it's how much vested interest you have in parts of one or more parts of the system under which you live, and other information that you've been exposed to. But it's also down to your own personal integrity and intellectual integrity, and whether you can admit that you're mistaken. I think that's one thing that is a societal thing generally that is causing some of this to happen. People are not encouraged to admit their own mistakes and learn from them. That's not something that's just as a sign of weakness, you see, and people don't like to be seen as being weak, so that's part of it. But I think, there's also, we've spoken again a bit about things like magic being used. And I think that, it might sound crazy to some people, but I genuinely think that magic of some kind, black magic or spells being cast, I think that is being used, do you
mean in a form of mind control? Or...
Yeah, of some kind. Yeah. I think, and subliminal messaging, maybe some kind of signaling that's going on below our normal level of consciousness. I think all of those things could be contributing to the situation we're in.
But then there's people like us that don't.
We're immune to it somehow. Yeah, we're immune to all of it.
Do you know why that might be?
For a mixture of reasons, I think, but it's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
I've got a question. Did you grow up with the Santa Claus myth?
My mum did tell me he existed at one point, and I remember waiting for him in the middle of the night, and I just looking out the window, and he didn't turn up, and I just fell asleep on the bed. And when
you learned it wasn't real, were you angry?
Not at her, no, but I've heard other people say to me that because her intentions were good, I know that, but someone else was saying to me, what was it, that the parents have basically brought you up believing in something that doesn't exist, and then when you find out that they're not real, you found out they've lied to you. So that's a form of mind control at a very early age.
Exactly. That's what I think is a healthy thing that's in our culture, because you learn that your parents can even pull a psyop on you. So can't your government?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's why I think it's a healthy lesson. And I remember seeing kids whose older brother or sister told them Santa Claus, isn't real, and they scream like it's the end of the world. That no, that can't be true, and it's very painful. But I think it's very educational.
Yeah. No, you're right.
So I'm curious about people who see through this junk.
Yeah.
And how did they start out? How many of them started out with the Santa Claus myth?
I don't know what it was, but 25 years ago, maybe more than that, I just woke up. I don't know what it was. It was just something that just switched. I don't know, it's a download or something that I just thought this is not adding up. And it went on I just started investigating, finding closed doors, another door open, finding shills, finding people that are gatekeepers, and you're just going through mazes trying to get through to the right type of people, that are going to sort of show you the right way, I suppose, to go, but I had to trust my own instincts and my own intuition about where to go. And I'm still finding that that now. I'm still sending Andrew stuff like, what do you think of this? Is this someone who's dodgy or not? I think I don't think it'll ever end. I think this whole thing's just going to go on and on.
That's a good point to mention is when I'm analyzing data, if I find a sub batch of data that's faulty, I need to throw out the whole thing. I'm not going to pick and choose, because that's biasing the data. So when there's somebody who's speaking and I find that they're wrong about something, even though it seems like they're right about other things, I know I can't trust them anymore. Because they can easily pull the wool over your eyes about something else, because if they're wrong about this, it shows that they're not real competent.
That's a good point, actually.
And for me, I think the only thing I'd add to that is that I'm perhaps slightly different in that I will try and contact that person, offer them corrections to what they've said that I know is wrong. And if they say, oh, thanks a lot, I didn't know that, thanks, then to me, that makes them trustworthy. If they either completely ignore me or continue to put out the same false information, which we know is false, then that proves that they are untrustworthy, or either untrustworthy, or they're really not bothered about improving the quality of their work, and therefore they don't have much intellectual integrity.
I mean, Amanda Vollmer actually said that as well. She said, I can't remember the word she used, but it's just slipped out of my head. It was something along the lines of, no, it's gone. I can't remember. I was just too involved with what you were saying there, and it's just slipped out of my head. But she did. She just mentioned that you got to trust your own instincts, and she said that a lot. That was it. She said something about they're either gatekeepers or they've got an ego, and they can't retract back over maybe 30 years of training. I think she was referring to Dr. Judy Mikovits. I'm not sure if it was her. It might have been her, who just was defending her career basically and her research. And she was like, well, if you can't see that you're wrong on some of these things, then it's your ego that's in control there. And she said a lot of these people have, if they're not controlled opposition, it's the ego that's in the way, really. I don't know if you agree with that. But
their ego could. I kind of think that could be true, but then at what expense are they letting their ego control? Because I think Andrew, who I have in mind, is someone who said that I know nothing about physics. I'm completely wrong. I've been debunked over and over again. And then they say that they're not a physicist. They don't know anything about physics, but they know that Judy Wood's wrong. But they're highly respected with everything else. So that's it really leads you to wonder what the problem is. And folks have tried to clarify things, and they know the truth. Don't confuse them with the facts.
But it could be that the fact that if a doctor's trained for 30 years and then all of a sudden finds out, hold on a minute, what I know is bullshit. Do I want to admit that? So do you think Dr. Vollmer's right in terms of they're protecting their ego, they're defending, the training or the brainwashing, and they don't want to admit that that's wrong?
Then how interested are they in the truth?
That's the question, which is why she's saying then that means that if they don't want to address that, then there's something wrong there.
My sister's a vet, and my cat was sick, and sneezing and sneezing and sneezing, and I thought maybe he has COVID. I was going to try to give him some ivermectin. I did just a teeny bit, and I told my sister, and she says, "Oh, don't give him that; it'll kill him." She's so much in belief that it's a dangerous medicine. Oh, my kitty got better.
Really?
It's a 20-year-old cat. He got better after that.
Wow. That's something. Is there anything you want to say, Andrew?
No, I think that's probably about covers it, really. If people want to go to the website, I'll just do a screen share. It's drjudywood.com. We've got, you can, if you don't want to spend hours and hours watching the videos, then you can look. Let me just get that up on the screen there so people can see what it looks like. You can go to this website here and go through the slideshows, and it'll probably take about 20 minutes, and you've got the various menus here, and then you can go and watch the videos and stuff as well. So it's all on there, really. And if you want to get the book, anyone wants to get the book, I've got copies in the UK here. So
just go to checktheevidence.com.
Yeah, that's right. And You know,
Yeah,
it's
please
all
note
there.
that it is an expensive book to produce, and I sell it essentially at cost. It's it got over 800 images, color images, and diagrams,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
544 pages total.
Mhm,
But you don't need to know the English language even. You can just read the pictures
mhm.
Yeah.
and just study each picture, and pretty soon it starts, you know, getting your interest up. Either that or people bail out after about chapter 6 or 7, and they say, oh, it's over my head. That means they can't emotionally handle it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I can get that. Yeah, Dr. Judy, thank you very much for giving me your time. And I wish you all the best, and I hope that more people will look at your work. I can only do my bit here. You know, I haven't got a massive fan base or anything like that, but you know, I'll put it out to people because I followed your work, and ever since I think Richard D. Hall covered you, yeah.
Did you start out with something else like bombs in the building or
Yeah, I
whatever
started
until
out
then?
with, well, as soon as it happened, I actually believed it. You know, this is going back 20 whatever years ago. And then I think Ike started to cover certain things, and I started to listen to what he was saying. And then I went along with the thermite. I actually was really going, yeah, it's got to be thermite because I can see the little sparks in the windows doing their things or whatever it was that, you know, I could see these little flames appearing there. And then it was bombs. And then I met Richard D. Hall at a conference, and I thought, oh shit, you know, this goes deeper than any of this stuff, you know. And then, you know,
I think it's so important to express that to people, that your progression.
Yes, yeah, that's right. I mean, I started, you know, I went along with the plane business, and then started analyzing the footage, and I was like, hang on a minute, that plane's disappearing, or you know, the wings disappearing. I don't even know if that was true, but and then I saw it go through the building, and the nose of the plane was coming out. I don't know if you've seen that footage where it's coming out of
Yeah.
part of the. I was like, well, how did it survive that? You know, and then there was just so many errors all over the place. I just but a lot of my friends won't buy it because, you know, they know people that know people, and they'll say, well, you know, they won't be like, how can they, like, what is everyone covering up on this? Is the policeman, the fireman, the pilot, you know, the news cameraman, is everyone in on some massive conspiracy? They just won't believe it can
People
go
believe what they think they should believe. That's why we can recover from stroke and brain injury. And I would like to note that quite a few of the first responders walking the streets were talking about seeing a bunch of wire. Ah, that must be from the plane. They saw some tennis shoes. Ah, that must be from the you know, passengers. Everything was to confirm their belief. There's no evidence of what they believed, but it was the power of suggestion.
Yeah.
And that's a real tough thing to overcome.
Wow. Power of suggestion, yeah. So, I mean, when you say tennis, I'm just going back over this, but was that just from the building itself, just leftover debris?
Just yeah, laying on the streets. There was somebody's shoes, tennis shoes, and
Right.
they thought that was proof that an airplane had been there.
Just tennis shoes?
Yeah, and then they saw some balled up wire. That must be from the airplane. Everything was, you know, summed up to be proving that an airplane had been there. There was no other evidence.
And they never found anything, no wings, no wheels, no nothing, no shopping.
There's some wheels, but you know how they got there. If you look at the trajectory, they'd have to fly horizontally and then drop down into a canyon, you know, between buildings.
So that would be that. So that would mean that those wheels were placed there deliberately.
Yep, yeah.
Right.
And this one set of landing gear looked like it had a fatigue crack. It grew into a spiral fracture. That's not what you would expect from something dropping down onto the street. And there's an engine, but it was from or part of an engine. It was from a totally different plane. You know, I won't say it wasn't. You know, it doesn't prove everything else. You could say it got there because it flew horizontally, you know, over several buildings and dropped vertically down. But it wasn't a normal trajectory because it would have to go through some buildings. If you just look at regular physics.
Judy, can I ask you though, if let's just go with that, because I just wanted to explore that for a second. So when that happened, someone would have to have seen someone drive up and drop all of that off, or was it there? You know, how do you think that would have got there?
Oh, you can have a bunch of stuff in a construction area that's covered with the tarp and then remove the tarp.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there's always a way around it, isn't there?
Yeah, and there's always construction going on around there with, you know, overhead covers of walkways and things like that.
Did you start off with when you saw that, did you know it straight away, or did you go along with, okay, this is a real plane, and you know?
No, straight away it was the building frothing up, and then looking around the faculty conference room while this was going on, and like, you guys aren't falling for this, you know, this is wacko. And then they looked at me like, you're nuts, you're wacko. You know, no words were said, but it was just those visual expressions. And that's when I thought of the billiard ball thing. I went up to my office and made those calculations, and I thought, okay, maybe I memorized the, you know, coefficient of gravity wrong. And I looked at another physics book, oh, that same number, another one, you know, hoping that it was a typo someplace. And then I decided to do the billiard ball thing because it's not the towers, and it would allow people's brains to work. And I tried on a colleague, and yeah, they said, you having a senior moment? Of course that's true. And then you apply it to 9/11, and suddenly they can't handle it.
Yeah, and then when you get to something like the Pentagon, that just becomes even more ridiculous, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's you know, the part that's in my book is that, you know, when this was all going on, I called my mom to see if there's any fighter jets flying overhead, because if we're being attacked, you would see fighter jets overhead, especially she lives near the Pentagon.
Yeah.
All right, she went out and looked. Nope, no fighter jets over here. Now she was skeptical.
Really?
Yeah, that was on 9/11, and because things that, you know, don't add up, and those are important not to overlook.
It seems to me that the Pentagon was just sort of the second fiddle to it. It didn't get much exposure. Is there anything that you could reveal about that one? I know we should have ended here, and I've just gone off on a tangent now. But,
yeah,
did the
there's
Pentagon, you know,
I happen to have recorded. I had my VCR automatically recording a TV show to watch it, you know, the People's Court, and so it recorded what happened then. And what was hilarious is I forgot his name, Bill Plant or something, a reporter who was outside at a phone booth outside the White House, was saying, we've all been evacuated from the White House, and ambulance is going by too. I know not where. It had something to do with what happened in New York, with something to do with airplanes. He wasn't misstating anything. This is brilliant reporting. And then he says, and whatever it was that happened at the Pentagon.
Oh, really?
I crack up when I hear that. This is the live recording, and whatever it was that happened at the Pentagon, he had been able to determine what it even had to do with. And at first, Bryant Gumbel thought it was, you know, a truck bomb, or they didn't know. And then they show some video of the area. He goes, well, this must be near the Pentagon. It can't be the Pentagon, because he didn't see any damage in the building.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that no one in the Pentagon staff or anyone, even a cleaner or someone, would said, I didn't even hear a plane. You know, hasn't anyone come out and said that there wasn't? I didn't even hear anything?
They work for the Pentagon. They can't.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, yeah.
And the roof didn't fall in for what, 30 minutes or so, but the windows next to that hole didn't break, and there was toasted cars in the area. So you see all the same stuff.
So the same technology used on the towers were used on the Pentagon.
That's what it appears.
Yeah.
That's what it appears, and also the same technology that made the airplane-shaped holes.
Right. Right.
And that's recorded by the photographer who standing at the base. He said that he heard a high-pitched noise, like a leaky steam pipe, and he was looking around. Everybody was looking around, and then the side of the building exploded, Tower 2. And he, you know, like a good photojournalist, he got a picture of the explosion. That's what was on the front page of the newspaper the next day. And then 45 or so minutes later, or 50 minutes later, he hears that same high pitch. Okay, people said that was an airplane. He didn't see an airplane, but they said it was an airplane, so it must be another one, and he's going to get this one on his camera this time. So he gets his camera up there, and he's ready to take a picture, and then he sees the building turning into dust through his viewfinder, turns around and makes a run for it.
Wow.
So it was the same sound that he heard.
So he didn't. So he's waiting for a plane to hit, and nothing hit, and then he just all of a sudden saw an explosion in the building, and then And the rest
No,
is
he's not
history.
waiting for a plane. He hears the high pitched sound, the weird
Right.
sound, and he's looking around like, anybody know what that is? Like, isn't that a
Yeah.
weird sound? And then it's the North Tower already has a hole in it. This is at the South Tower.
Yeah.
And then it's an explosion. So he whips his camera up and gets a picture of that explosion. But there's no,
Right.
he never saw a plane. And then, 45 minutes or so later, or an hour or 50 minutes later, he hears that same high. Then, okay, people said that was an airplane. Okay, so I guess airplanes make that high pitched whistle sound. And then, later he hears that same sound. Okay, it must be another airplane coming in. I'll get this one for sure. And he gets his camera ready. And through the viewfinder, he sees the building turning to dust. And
Right.
turns around, makes a run for it, and he got picked up and carried, a couple of blocks before.
You know what? There was footage of a fireman after the first hit from ground looking up, and then you can actually hear the plane coming in. Now, was that, if it's not a plane, what was that noise then, do you think? Was that sound effects put in, or was it just?
I don't know. I haven't seen the video, but there's various comments from different places. You know what the complex looks like. When the South Tower was getting its hole, I don't say airplane hits. It was getting its hole. There were some firefighters in the corner of VC and West, by Tower 1, that intersection. And the guy said you could even feel the heat from, they're assuming, because people said it was airplanes later, that must have been the fuel burning, and he could feel the heat from it that melted, burned the hair on the back of his neck and melted some of the stuff on his coat.
Wow.
That's not regular fire heat.
Yeah, no. And then for the record, because obviously this is your skill set, aviation fuel does not do that, does it? To a building or to metal?
When I first heard that story, I said, oh yeah, so look up, and when the airplane's going overhead, feel a drip, drip, drip of melted engine.
Right, yeah.
That answers it, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, because I mean, I've just had some people say to me, well, aviation fuel must be heated to such a level that it's just melting, what you're looking at, it's just part of the reaction of the aviation fuel melting steel.
But then why doesn't it melt the engines?
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. There's so many, there's so many
look at a parallel things when you get told something. Look at something totally unrelated also, and try the same logic on it. See if that works.
Yeah, and I never understood the idea about toasted cars. I was like, well, how can the police siren be totally clear?
Okay.
Yeah, but on this side, it's completely melted. Like, there's no
toast.
Yeah,
As I say, it's toast. I'm not implying that it was cooked. It's toast. It's history. Something happened to it. It was damaged beyond. You got to get another one. You can't fix that one. It's toast.
Yeah,
but
and also some of these cars were quite far away from the buildings, weren't they?
I'm not sure where all of them were. There's the toasted car lot where I have a picture of the cars before they were toasted and after they're toasted. That is quite a distance away.
Yeah, so how does aviation fuel do that? It doesn't, does it? Yeah.
Richard Gage even tried to say, oh, the thermite sprinkled on the car tops.
Right.
But what's bizarre is that the seat belts weren't toasted, but or the plastic trim around the door.
That's what I mean.
But it could look, it's like particular materials that were toasted.
Yeah. So so whatever was used was specifically targeted in a way then.
Well, that's its properties of it. And one thing that came to mind is sort of like a parallel with trailer parks. You know how tornadoes like trailer parks? Well, the trailers aren't as well grounded as regular houses.
Yeah.
They're grounded, but they're not super grounded. So it's how much charge builds up and how fast it can discharge. Yeah. I think of cars on rubber tires. And the street sign right next to it that's potted in concrete into the ground, that doesn't get toasted.
Mm.
So I think that's why there's a lot of vehicles got toasted, but not the other stuff around them. Yeah. And paper wasn't burned next to them either.
No, I know. That's strange. That, I mean, would your guess be that it would be something that was based in the vicinity, or do you think it could be I hate to say, well, no, actually, I wouldn't say hate to say it, because I mean, I can't think of any other alternative. If it's not that, then it would be in space. So it would be space-based weapons.
We don't need to figure out where the parts were, and I think it was two-part interference for field effects.
Sorry, what does that actually mean? Sorry.
Somebody gave me this example, and I think it's good. Is a cell phone, in order to make a call, you need to have a tower that it connects to.
Right.
And you need the cell phone. You need both.
Right.
You don't care where the cell phone tower is, as long as you're within range.
Right. I got you now. Yeah.
So if you have, like what John Hutchison's work is, he has a static field, and then within that, he interferes radio frequency signals in particular places. So it isn't just one component. You need two.
Right. That makes sense.
And that's also what really concerns me about all these cell phone towers going in, and all these, radio frequency towers.
You mean 5G?
Yeah, as well as I remember when they switched over from analog TV signals to digital the summer before, when they're installing brand new radio frequency transmission towers, we had a huge amount of these mega tornadoes like Joplin, Missouri, and that one came a year later or so. But these heavy duty, that's when the weather really started getting wacky in the Midwest. And so if you're putting in all these brand new radio frequency transmission, it was also the birds that fell out of the sky. Yeah. With a storm system moving through, so you had a static field. And it probably moved through between some radio transmission towers. But I want to see the environmental impact statements and testing done before any of this stuff gets built.
But the thing is, they're putting up 5G all over the place. And would you say that there is something malicious in 5G, in your opinion?
Well, if at a minimum, they're fixing to mess up, you can say it's unintended consequences, but there will be consequences.
Right.
You know how Percy Spencer discovered microwaves and then later developed microwave oven? He had a chocolate bar in his pocket, was working on fixing a microwave transmission tower, and reached his pocket and it was soup. His chocolate bar had melted, and he went, and went back to the lab and had them try to reproduce it. And that's how he came up with the microwave oven. But what that says is they did not know that effect when they installed the microwave transmission towers. And I think the same thing is true with this 5G. There's a whole lot of effects. You can say this unintended, but that kind of irresponsibility is unthinkable. I mean, it's.
See, I would go along with the fact that I think it'd be intentional.
Oh yeah, but I'm going on the easy end of it. So I don't have to say it.
But you know what,
the conservative.
If it is intentional, and I think it is, why would they make something? And I'm playing dumb here. Why would they make something intentional that could affect their own crew or their own people, whether that's police, army, or any of their own gang? Why would they?
You don't have to have a hurricane in the area.
Yeah.
Because you just need the static field, and then interfere the radio frequency signal within that to pinpoint what you want to go after.
Right.
But the people who've developed this know what they're dealing with, and it's the way it is because they want it to be that way. Yeah,
that doesn't surprise me. On that note,
so that's why I think it's good to talk about that effect in these towers from a conservative side, instead of finger pointing, saying, what is it doing to our environment?
Yeah.
And the more people that talk about that, I think the better.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dr. Judy. Andrew, is there anything you want to say before we go?
No, I think I've said all I needed to. So just visit the websites for more, and try and get your head around what Dr. Judy's been saying all these years, if you haven't already, that is.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you for your help, Dr. Judy.
And thanks for your help too, and sanity with and courage for talking about what's real.
No, that's exactly it. That's what it's all about. And truth is truth, and facts are facts, aren't they? So as long as we stay on that path, I want to thank you again for your time, Judy, and you, Andrew.
Thank you.
And I'll catch up with you soon, hopefully. And
Okay.
if you can send me the link whenever you're done, or put it out on your thing, and I'll download it off. Check the evidence.
Will do. Yeah.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care, Andrew.
Yep.
Take care, mate.
And you. Bye for
Bye-bye.
now.